You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The views expressed by the individuals during this broadcast are their own opinions, and they may not be the same as those of their group or other organizations they may be involved with.
All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Oh yeah, baby, that's lovely.
Good morning, it's August the 29th, and welcome to Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News. We're live from the Legacy420.com news desk here at paceradio.net. Good morning, Glenn. How you doing?
I'm doing great. It looks like you're in a much nicer spot than I am, though.
What, yeah, I'm outside. I'm hiding from the sun because I've got on Monday with Rev Cindy, I've got the glare coming off of the greenhouse, off the windows.
Oh,
I've got that, and I've got the sun over here. It's nice to have the sun, though, but the problem is I can't see the screen when I can't see because the sun's in my eyes. Right? Yeah. Everybody deals with the suns in their eyes, and knows what I mean. I think
much better than having no sun.
Correct. Exactly. Much better than rain. Looks like I could just move over here, some of the spots, eh? But yeah. It's a nice day, though, so it's a good day to be outside. And at the odd time, I'm sure people will hear the birds chirping.
Yep, I like that sound.
Yeah. Peaceful for sure. So, any bike news?
Other than I'm going out as soon as we're done here.
All right, so you got the tire on it and everything ready to go.
I got the tire on it. I ordered a front tire. It's sitting in my car. It's not on yet, but the front tire is still good on the bike, so I'm okay. Yeah, works good, and I can't wait. It's sunny. It hasn't been really nice in the last couple of days here.
All right, good stuff. All right, well, look forward to the story next week when we get together.
Yeah.
All righty, well, let's get started and get at her. First story of the day comes to us from StratCan. Headline says, Tokyo Smoke to close 29 locations as it seeks creditor protection.
The cannabis retailer says the closures are part of a restructuring process the brand is seeking out under the company's Creditor Arrangement Act from the Ontario Superior Court of Justice. The company says other locations across Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Newfoundland and Labrador will remain in operation, at least for the time being.
The company says it has secured financing to continue operating while it restructures its business. In a press release, Tokyo Smoke says that following a thorough review of all available options and alternatives, the company has now begun this restructuring to better align its operations with current market and regulatory conditions, which it says has significantly changed since the retail chain launched.
And Reconstruct LLP is acting as legal advisor to Tokyo Smoke, and Alvarez and Marshall Canada is acting as the CCAA monitor. Tokyo Smoke's restructuring plan focuses on closing underperforming locations while beginning discussions with landlords to obtain consensual lease amendments for its remaining store locations. The company lists 61 corporate stores, 29 franchise stores, and 11 vacant stores for a total of 101 in the monitor report, as well as 474 employees. 5 of its corporate stores, comprising 37 employees, are unionized.
Tokyo Smoke says that significant overhead costs required to manage its approximately 100 retail locations have resulted in material and recurring losses. For the 12-month period ended June 30th, 2024, the retail chain generated revenue of approximately $93.5 million and an EBITDA of a negative $10.5 million.
Wow.
Yeah.
The book value for Tokyo Smoke's liabilities exceeds the book value of its assets by approximately $89.1 million. As of June 30th, 2024, the company held assets with a book value of approximately $148.2 million and had liabilities with a book value of approximately $237.4 million. Tokyo Smoke had a net loss of $29.3 million for the fiscal year that ended June 30th, 2024, and the motion for their initial order was approved on August 27th. The comeback hearing will be held on Friday, September 6th at 8:30 a.m.
Ouch. It's a lot
That's
of
a lot of
cash.
locations.
Yeah, a lot of locations, a lot of quick cash. You know, is it the market, or did they just jump too quickly and grow too fast?
They didn't really explain too much in this. I wish they would explain a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm sure there'll be more down the road as far as news on that.
Yep.
And I'm sure we'll be able to have an update. Alrighty, on to the next story. This one comes to us from Marijuana Moment. Feds fund research on how psychedelics can treat meth addiction with a new $2.4 million grant.
The National Institutes of Health will put $2.4 million toward funding studies on the use of psychedelics to treat methamphetamine use disorders, researchers announced this week. The money comes as federal health officials note sharp increases in death from methamphetamine and other psychostimulants in recent years. The fatal overdoses involving the substances rising nearly fivefold between 2015 and 2022. Recipients in the 5-year grant from the National Institute on Drug Abuse, which is the NIDA, include researchers at the University of California, San Diego's Center for Psychedelic Research, Louisiana State University, Health Shreveport, and the Medical College of Wisconsin.
Now, according to John McCorvey, he's the MCW professor and one of the grant recipients. He recently said in a news release that there are currently no pharmacological treatments for with meth addiction. He says that ultimately they hope to pave the way for new therapeutic approaches to treat stimulant use disorder, impacting the lives of so many who are coping with addiction. Beyond studying whether or not psychedelic treatment might be a promising therapy to treat methamphetamine addiction, the research is also aimed at pinning down the underlying mechanisms behind the beneficial effects of psilocybin and other ethogens. Ultimately, the goal is to develop psychedelics-related drugs that treat underlying health conditions but don't produce a psychedelic experience.
Psychedelics appear to have significant therapeutic activity against different types of substance abuse and other psychiatric disorders, said Adam Halberstadt, director of UCSD, Center for Psychedelic Research, and another grant recipient. However, existing psychedelics induce intensive psychoactive effects and can also include side effects in some individuals, complicating the clinical use of these substances and restricting their widespread application. Our project seeks to understand the mechanisms for the therapeutic effects of psychedelics against methamphetamine addiction, Haberstadt continued, potentially enabling development of a new generation of molecules with effects that are much more manageable and better tolerated.
The team is particularly interested in serotonin receptor 5, HT2A, which is associated with psychedelic effects. They say that our research aims to unravel the precise mechanisms through which psychedelics influence the 5-HT2A receptor, understanding that could lead to lessening their psychoactive effect and open the door to new treatments.
And reducing the ethnogenic effects of psychedelic, the group says, could facilitate regular or even daily use. The push for more effective treatment for methamphetamine use disorder comes amid a general uptick in methamphetamine related overdose deaths in the U.S. South and West. The release about the research says methamphetamine was the most common drug detected in overdose deaths in 2017, outpacing opioids.
That's part of the broader spike in deaths with meth and other psychostimulants, according to the NIDA data. 34,000 people died from overdoses involving the substances in 2022, up from 5,716 since 2015.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, Kevin Murdan, he's a professor at Louisiana Addiction Research Center. He says for methamphetamine addiction, the current standard of care involves behavioral treatments with limited success rates over multiple cycles of therapy. This creates a public health imperative to research new and deliver effective therapies for methamphetamine addiction. This research project will advance psychedelics as a promising new treatment option based on reported data in initial clinical studies, as well as our own preliminary research. It will also unlock understanding into key psychological mechanisms that drive methamphetamine addiction, as well as therapeutic response mechanisms, allowing the development of second-generation serotonin agents with improved profiles.
And past studies have suggested that psychedelics could unlock promising new pathways to treat substance use disorder. Last year, for instance, a first-of-its-kind analysis offered novel insights into exactly how psychedelic-assisted therapy works for people addicted to alcohol. NIDA said the federal agency that provided the $2.4 million grant last year announced a $1.5 million funding round to further study psychedelics and addiction.
Earlier this year, meanwhile, the National Center of Complementary and Integrative Health, which is part of the National Institute of Health, identified the treatment of alcohol use disorder as one of the number of possible benefits of psilocybin, despite the substance remaining a Schedule I controlled substance under the U.S. laws. Sounds like cannabis, eh?
It does.
Yeah. Okay, keep going.
Oh, the agency highlighted a 2022 study that suggested that psilocybin may be helpful for alcohol use disorder. The research found people who were in psilocybin-assisted therapy had fewer heavy drinking days over the 32 weeks than the control group, which NCCIH said suggests that psilocybin may be helpful for alcohol use disorder. Finding another recent study suggests that the use of full-spectrum psychedelic mushroom extract has a more powerful effect than chemically synthesized psilocybin alone, which could have implications for psychedelic-assisted therapy. The findings imply that the experience of ethnogenic mushrooms may involve a so-called entourage effect, similar to what's observed with cannabis and many of its components.
Yeah, exactly. I could see that happening.
Yeah.
And we see that in the cannabis end, obviously. People find it's better to have everything in there than just one part of it. It's like taking the bus off the wheel, right? You take a wheel off the bus doesn't go down the road quite as good.
Yeah, that's the way I've always thought of it. You need the full plant.
Yeah. No, I've shut down that story, but it's good to see that it's not huge amounts of money when you look at it over the 5 years, but it is research they're looking into, and people do get addicted to methamphetamine, and there's no reason why not to find a way. As I said, there's no cure or any real treatment for its addiction.
I'm absolutely astounded by the number 34,000, up from 5,000.
Yeah,
that's a huge difference over a period of about 7 years. I'm just wondering, do you think that is because it's becoming more accepted as a therapy and people are trying it on their own?
Well, it's not the like as far as the meth end, that's not being used to treat therapy.
Oh, yes.
Right? So,
yeah.
All righty. Here we go. On to the next story. This one comes to us from MJ Biz Daily. Headline says, do marijuana consumers prioritize cost over sustainability?
Cannabis consumers are environmentally conscious in their purchasing decisions, but price is still the dominant factor. According to Chicago-based cannabis data company Brightfield Group, demand for sustainable cannabis products is rising.
Brightfield research shows an increase in eco-friendly shopping preferences among cannabis consumers, with 57% of the respondents favoring them in 2023, up from 55.9% a year earlier. Furthermore, 69% of cannabis consumers sometimes or often purchase products with sustainable packaging, and nearly a quarter, 23%, are frequent buyers.
Cannabis consumers in particular are going to resonate with sustainable packaging and just sustainable practices more broadly, said Jennifer Krieger, who's Brightfield's Vice President of Product. Cannabis consumers are attracted to all eco-friendly packaging options, including plant-based materials, biodegradable materials, plastic-free initiatives, and compostable choices. I wish someone would tell the government.
Yeah. The top packaging preferences are recyclable, reusable, and plastic-free. Brightfield's findings were based on surveys conducted last year with 21,752 census balanced U.S. consumers and 4,786 U.S. cannabis consumers.
Citing its own research, Canadian cannabis producer Tilray Brands has suggested consumers are 50% more likely to purchase cannabis product with sustainable packaging than without. However, these sentiments often are dismissed at the checkout counter if the eco-friendly products cost more, according to Joe Hoda. It was promised to CEO of Wana Brands in April.
Consumers really have to speak with their wallets and be loud and clear about it, he says. Otherwise, change doesn't happen. The Colorado-based edibles maker, which sells more gummies than any other brand in the industry for years, has utilized recyclable and biodegradable product packaging. There's a graph there.
Despite their sustainability preferences, consumers are also driving the boom in all-in-one vape devices, which often end up in landfills. San Francisco-based Pax Labs has made strides to develop vape pens and related accessories that can be used repeatedly by consumers. But the vape manufacturers also understands that purchasing habits, the power of convenience, and limitations on discretionary income.
One of the realities of operating in the cannabis industry is that we all have to meet consumers where they are, according to Laura Fogelman, spokesman for Pax Labs. She says that one of the things that's become really clever over the past couple of years is that consumers really are gravitating towards these all-in-one devices.
Cannabis material costs. Our constraints on packaging and materials, plus running a highly regulated business with steep taxes, often limits operators' ability to initiate more sustainability practices, according to Mike Forenza, who's the managing partner of AE Global, a Miami-based custom packaging provider for the cannabis industry. Every brand is saying they would definitely like to do it if it was economically or commercially viable.
Now, according to Bright Staff data, nearly 2/3 of cannabis consumers, that's 65%, believe sustainable options are too expensive, though their percentage slowly has been decreasing since 2020. Unsurprisingly, overall product price is the top factor in purchasing, with 75% of the survey respondents ranking it number one, well ahead of the number two consideration, desired effects.
That cost conscious has led to some gaps in sustainable packaging adoption, despite a growing commitment from consumers who extend their own sustainability practices beyond cannabis products, such as reducing waste and or repurposing items, according to Brightfield's Krieger. We're not seeing the trends of purchasing that we'd like to for sustainability, she said. Finding ways to overcome the concern for price is where the hope is. I think a lot of this has to do with we're getting squeezed on all sides now, and we would love to have recyclable packaging, green packaging, but a lot of people can't afford to spend the extra, even if it's $1.
Yeah, it all adds cost to the end product that ends up being paid by the consumer, right?
Yeah.
If they could make those materials cheaper for the businesses to buy in order to, pass those savings along, hopefully, but that doesn't always happen, as we know. Yeah. Alrighty, on to our next story, which is our last story before we go to our break, and this one comes to us from the Marijuana Moment. The headline says, DEA pushing cannabis rescheduling past election is incredibly disappointing, Congressman says as stakeholders react to hearing. Yeah.
The Drug Enforcement Administration decision to schedule a public hearing on the Biden administration's proposal to reschedule cannabis in December after the election has been met with mixed reactions. Congressional lawmakers, industry stakeholders, and advocates are sharing a range of perspectives on the procedural development, from disappointment to cautious optimism. Prohibitionists, meanwhile, are ecstatic. While supporters of the rescheduling action hope to see a final rule issued before the November election, DEA announced on Monday that it would hold an administrative hearing on the proposal to move cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 under the Controlled Substance Act on December 2nd. The timeline leaves room for the possibility that final rulemaking may not happen until after the next administration takes office, creating added uncertainty about the ultimate outcome. And this is absolute stupidity.
Oh, I couldn't believe it when I heard this. I went, what?
Yeah.
No.
It's the same thing every single time. Let's push it off. Push it off.
Yeah, that's right. Now, Rep. Earl Blumauer, co-chair of the Congressional Cannabis Caucus, said on Tuesday that it's incredibly disappointing to see the DEA drag their feet on an issue which has been a clear White House priority. However, he said that while he would have preferred to see rescheduling finalized before the election, we still have every reason to believe that it will happen before President Biden leaves office.
I don't see that happening.
I know. Yeah, I'm not too optimistic like Blumauer is. So.
Blumauer, who is retiring at the end of this Congress, added that he still has every hope that because of our work together, Vice President Kamala Harris and the 2024 Democratic National Presidential nominee will take further steps to rationalize cannabis policy and end the failed war on drugs. Representative Matt Gaetz, who's a Republican from Florida, for his part, shared a Marijuana Moment news article about DEA scheduling the hearing, adding a simple message: delist cannabis. And that's the only thing I've ever agreed with Matt Gaetz on.
Yeah, you got. I can completely agree with you on. yeah. You know, it's one thing to say it like this, but when it comes to voting, why is it always knocked down, right?
Yeah, and quite clearly, I mean, it's U.S. politics we're talking about. The public is in support of this.
Yeah.
The government is the one's been dragging their heels for the last 10, 15 years.
Oh, yeah, basically almost 100 here. So, while Gaetz, like Blumauer, supports federal legalizing cannabis altogether, he also took some by surprise recently when he said he'd be voting against the Florida cannabis legalization initiative as a resident of the state, arguing that the reform would be better addressed legislatively rather than as a constitutional amendment on the ballot.
I think he's completely full of BS.
Yeah.
Because if he voted for this measure, that clearly states that he is for the federal measure too.
That's just bullshit.
Yep.
Now, Brian Marshall of Dutchie, who co-chairs the Coalitions of Cannabis Scheduling Reform, said that a hearing was always a possibility, and we are prepared for it.
And we believe that medical evidence and public opinion are overwhelmingly in favor of a swift final rule. Swift, wow. If the Drug Enforcement Administration moves ahead with the hearing, we urge them to conduct it in a timely manner. What about now? Members of our coalition have petitioned to participate in any hearing. Now that the Drug Enforcement Administration has granted one, we expect to have a seat at the table. The Biden administration review of cannabis has been expedited at every stage, and we remain optimistic that the proposed rule will be finalized this year. And I think there's absolutely no way. If they're having it on December 2nd, there is no way it's going through this year. No,
and I don't know why he is optimistic.
I have no idea either.
That it'll be finalized this year. That strikes a more optimistic tone compared to how many industry stakeholders have taken the news. Cannabis stocks have slumped following the announcement, as expectations about a final rescheduling rule being issued before the November election, partially fueled by dubious reporting, were dashed. Yeah, I saw in the news. The stocks all started climbing like crazy. And then when the announcement came out, it all went poof.
Yeah.
But it was far from certain that the administration would move to the final rulemaking without an administrative hearing, especially given the widespread public interest in the issue and multiple requests from reform supporters and opponents alike to take that additional procedural step.
Deputy Director Paul Martano said in a blog post that the administrative hearings were an integral part of the rescheduling process. To think that the DEA, which historically has opposed any changes to cannabis prohibited status, would sign off on the most significant proposed change in federal cannabis policy in over 50 years, absent such hearings, was always wishful thinking, he said. That said, the scientific evidence in favor of removing cannabis in Schedule 1 remains overwhelming. Cannabis clearly has legitimate therapeutic value, and it possesses a superior safety profile compared to other Schedule 1 or Schedule 2 controlled substances.
Yep, sure does. Now, Steph Scherer, founder and president of the Americans for Safe Access, also weighed in on the announcement, emphasizing that millions of patients, their families, and healthcare providers are counting on leaders in Washington to prioritize their rights and health needs. Goes on to say that the delay in the rescheduling process only highlights the urgent need for federal representatives who will champion the integration of cannabis into our healthcare infrastructure and advocate for the rights of those who rely on it.
I love that line there. They're counting on leaders in Washington to prioritize their rights and health needs.
Yeah.
That's not going to work out for you.
Uh-oh, here you go. You get the next line.
The prohibitionist group, Smart Approaches to Marijuana, SAM, has made clear they're enthused by the scheduling of the hearing, with SAM President Kevin Sable calling it a huge win in our fight to have this decision guided by medical science, not politics. And we will seek to use this hearing to spell out in detail how cannabis continues to fail to meet the criteria to be rescheduled.
Oh, yeah. I completely agree. Have the hearing.
Yeah, have the hearing like 6 months ago.
Yeah. Like, why is it happening in December?
I think this is a purposely done by the DEA in the hopes that the Republicans get elected. And that's the only way I can think of this, because I think if this was scheduled 6 months ago, it would go through this year.
Yeah.
And if the Republicans do get elected, which I don't think they will, but if they do, I can see them putting the kibosh on this completely.
Yeah. The Psychedelics research company, Panacea Plant Science, which has challenged DEA's administrative hearing process over the agency's proposed ban on certain psychedelic substances, told the Marijuana Moment that PPS is happy to see the hearing scheduled, as we were one of the groups the DEA referenced as requesting a hearing in the original announcement. We plan to challenge the legality of the hearing ahead of time and thus cause it to be canceled or delayed while our challenges play out. The Harris Biden DEA and DOJ did not follow proper administrative law process, including their findings of no tribal implications, which is key to our challenge, and expect the cannabis rule, making it to be delayed several years.
In Congress, numerous lawmakers have shared their own perspectives on the proposed reform with DEA and DOJ since the Schedule 3 announcement was made in March. In August, for example, Senator Chuck Grassley, who's a Republican, raised concerns about the Biden administration's justification, for recommending cannabis rescheduling, demanding answers to questions from federal agencies about how they arrived at the decision in what he described as a rushed and unconventional administrative process. A week earlier, top Democratic senators, including Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, who's a Democrat from New York, sent a separate letter to Attorney General Merrick Garland and DEA Administrator Ann Milgram, urging the agencies to promptly finalize the rule to reschedule cannabis.
While rescheduling would remove certain research barriers and free up state licensed cannabis businesses to take federal tax deductions under the Internal Revenue Service Code known as 280E, it would not formally or federally legalize cannabis, as the Congressional Research Service has made known in multiple recent reports.
Meanwhile, 2 additional congressional lawmakers have joined the ranks of the GOP members who are challenging what they say is the unusual process that led the Biden administration to propose rescheduling cannabis, expressing concern about how the review was carried out and demanding answers. Republican or Representative Doug LaMafia, who's a Republican from California, condemned the Biden administration's push to reclassify cannabis, as well as legislative efforts to enact bipartisan cannabis banking reform, because he says the policy changes would prop up this immoral industry and give a green light to the evil that comes from drug use.
Oh.
I love that. It's immoral and it's evil. It's evil to help people with medicine. Imagine that, eh?
Oh, it doesn't get any better. I've shut it down. We got to go to break, but it's just you know, like you see, we got Matt Skate saying, "Oh, delist it." You can't even get his members of his own party to agree to just even rescheduling it. Never mind delisting it.
Because it's evil and immoral. I was actually told that it was immoral by my doctor when I asked him.
Wow. Yeah. No, not right. All right. It's time for us to go to break time. And we'll be right back after our joint session, because we got the joint sitting right here. That's why I'm outside. You're watching Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News live here at paceradio.net.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420.
Are you looking to get your medical cannabis grow license? Limestone City Hydroponics can help patients through the process of obtaining their license to grow medical cannabis. What's that? You don't have a doctor. If you meet the medical criteria, Limestone City Hydroponics has a nurse practitioner who can assess and provide medical cannabis prescriptions. What are you waiting for? Contact Limestone City Hydroponics at limestonecityhydroponics.ca or call them at 613-548-0420.
What do you find at paceradio.net? People advocating cannabis education.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Cannabis edibles are an effective way to manage pain and other ailments, especially when you deal with your trusted partner, Legacy 420, in Tyson, Mohawk territory. You see, we lab test every product on site to ensure proper dosage every time, which is critical when consuming cannabis edibles. All Legacy 420 edibles are made by our classically trained baker and chocolatier, and we also have super tasty vegan options.
Our baker has been in the industry for 25 years. She's also a chocolatier. Everything from savory to sweet, your chocolate bars, brownies, butter tarts, you name it, we make it.
Talk to our knowledgeable Cannatex about our incredible variety available. Give your trusted partners a call. Legacy 420 out on your road.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
Hey, we're back from a medication session. Actually, I'm still smoking my joint, but we got 4 more stories to bring. We got some stuff on some
You need a
clinical
smaller
news.
joint or a bigger break?
Hey, actually, yeah, a little both, maybe. All righty, here we go. Started with our first story as we got back from the break. Cannabis extracts effective for treating refractory nausea per clinical trial. And this comes to us from the Canatech today.
Anyone who has battled cancer or has a loved one who has battled cancer knows that firsthand how awful it can be. Undergoing chemotherapy treatment is often necessary, but is also very difficult for cancer patients to have to endure. A common side effect of chemotherapy treatments is refractory nausea. Refractory nausea is a condition that occurs when nausea and vomiting don't respond to treatment. When a cancer patient experiences it, it makes a difficult situation even worse.
Wow. I know that I use cannabis for nausea, especially when I get prepped for my colonoscopies and stuff. And yeah, works for me. Now, according to a recent clinical trial conducted in Australia, the use of plant-derived cannabis extracts is a safe and effective treatment for refractory nausea. They say that the administration of cannabis extracts containing equal percentages of THC and CBD safely and effectively relieves the nausea and vomiting in patients undergoing chemotherapy. So there you go. That's good.
Wow. Australian investigators assessed the use of standardized cannabis extract versus placebo in 147 patients undergoing intravenous chemotherapy. Australian law permits physicians to prescribe cannabis products to patients unresponsive to conventional treatments. Participants in the study all suffered from nausea and vomiting despite taking standard antiemetic medications. Patients consumed either extracts or placebo 3 times a day, in addition to their prescription medications. Compared to a placebo, cannabis extracts significantly reduce vomiting frequency and improve patients' quality of life.
Big words, quality of life. Researchers concluded an oral formulation of THC and CBD was an effective adjunct to standard antiemetrics for preventative and treatment of refractory CINV with adverse effects including sedation and dizziness, but no increase in serious adverse effects. Our data support the claim that oral THC CBD is an effective and safe option for the prevention of refractory CINV, which is chemotherapy-induced nausea and vomiting.
In an accompanying editorial, authors opined for patients receiving moderate or high emetic risk chemotherapy, THC CBD may be considered as an option for secondary prophylaxis or CINV for patients who had refractory nausea in a previous cycle, despite guideline concordant treatment. Both cannabis and THC are well-established anti-nauseants. An oral formulation of synthetic THC, which is dronabinol, has been FDA approved in the United States as an anti-Semitic since 1985.
Yeah. I used extracts as well as cannabis. It works for me for nausea.
Nice.
Because if you're going to take a pill to try to reduce your nausea, isn't there a chance that you're just going to throw that pill back up?
Yep. Yeah, and if you read the side of the packages, most of them say it will cause that.
What do you do? Alrighty. Story number 6 of the day. California Senate passes bills to allow marijuana sales at state-run farmers markets and legalize cannabis cafes. This comes to us in a marijuana moment. Yes.
The California Senate has approved assembly-passed bills allowing small marijuana growers to sell their products directly to consumers at state-organized farmers markets and to legalize cannabis cafes in the state. On Tuesday, senators voted 27-5 to advance the marijuana farmers markets measure, with Assembly Member Gail Pellerin, who's a Democrat. Members also approved the Cannabis Cafe proposal from Assembly Member Matt Haney, who's another Democrat, in a 30-7 vote.
Now it says allowing small cannabis growers. I'm going to assume that they're all legal and licensed.
I would think so.
Yeah. I'm assuming that's what that is. Get out of there. And now on Tuesday, you read that, right?
Yep.
Yes. The former bill would also allows on-site cannabis consumption at approved events. If enacted, however, the law would not mean that small cultivators could freely market their products alongside other traditional vendors selling fruits and vegetables at traditional farmers markets. For example, unless there was a local and state regulatory approval to sell cannabis at a specialized area.
The bill cleared the Assembly in late May with nearly unanimous support before moving on to the Senate, where it passed through 2 committees. It still needs to go back to the Assembly for concurrence on Senate amendments. Under the proposal, the Department of Cannabis Control would be authorized to issue a state temporary event license to a licensee authorizing on-site cannabis sales to and consumption by persons 21 years of age or older at certain venues expressly approved by a local jurisdiction as specified, the bill text says. Sounds really complicated.
Yeah. Local jurisdictions would need to consent the following to allowing the events in order for a license to be granted. I wasn't surprised there. Now, according to Senator Susan Eggman, she said on the floor that as a farmer's daughter, knowing the importance of having that direct relationship with the consumer, this allows cannabis farmers to be able to sell at authorized events cannabis directly to the sellers, bringing the stock right to the person. Applicants wishing to obtain a state temporary events license would also need to meet the definition of a small cannabis producer. That means they could not be cultivating more than 1 acre of cannabis, 22,000 square feet under a mixed light tier 1 cultivation license, or 5,000 square feet under a mixed light tier 2 or indoor cultivation license.
This would expand upon California law, which was enacted in 2018, allowing regulators to issue temporary cannabis event licenses in jurisdictions where the local government permits it. It was the policy change that allowed cannabis sales and on-site consumption at the California State Fair for the first time this year. Under the policy, approved retailers could market their cannabis, whereas the latest legislation would extend that to small cultivators that received the necessary license.
Meanwhile, Haney's separate cannabis cafe bill that's also passed the Senate this week would allow on-site cannabis consumptions at licensed businesses that could also offer non-cannabis food and non-alcoholic drinks and host live events such as concerts if they get permission from the local government. Hey, Glenn, did we not tour a bunch of those like a dozen years ago in Toronto?
We did. It was one of my favorite things I think I've ever done. I had a lot of fun doing that. I met a lot of good people, a lot of wicked places that we went to with some good food and good drinks, not necessarily alcohol, mostly non-alcohol, but it was really good. I'm wondering here, it says here they're allowed to sell non-cannabis food and non-alcoholic drinks. So you can't have a beer.
Correct.
Which is weird to me.
Well, it's just like here in Canada too. We can't have alcohol and cannabis mixed in.
Never made sense to me. I'm not a drinker, but it never made sense to me that someone couldn't sit in the sun and have a beer and smoke a joint. I never understood.
We talked about that last night on the Pace Radio show with our guest, D the Bud Guy, and talking about drinking alcohol and smoking cannabis, and the fact that people do go green easier when they can combine the two of them. And he suggested, what was this? He had a suggestion, which one of them to do first in order to reduce that effect. But I can remember when I used to drink and I consumed cannabis, there was times where I was going, holy smokes! Like, find me a cold spot to lay on the floor, will you?
I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, but that happens with just alcohol itself.
Oh, it does. Oh, yeah.
And I'm not saying no, we should be able to go and get blasted, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm just saying we're all adults. Once you're able to consume alcohol and able to consume cannabis, you're an adult according to the law. So why couldn't I have a beer sitting in a 80-degree sun while I'm smoking a joint? I can do it at home. I have no problem.
Well, that's where they want you to do it. Then, yeah, they don't want to mix them, eh? I think I wouldn't doubt if part of the effect is the driving concern. So
yeah, and there's always that concern. I mean, don't drive when you're doing it. That's that simple. Don't drive when you're drinking. Don't drive when you're smoking. That's it.
All right, back to the story. It continues on with Governor Gavin Newsom vetoed the prior version, saying that while he appreciated that the intent was to provide cannabis retailers with increased business opportunities and an avenue to attract new customers, he felt concerned this bill could undermine California's long-standing smoke-free workplace protections, and that's what's happening here. That's the problem here as well. To that end, the new measures contains changes to create separation between public consumption spaces and back rooms for businesses where food is prepared or stored in order to better protection the health of workers in line with governor's concerns.
And the bill was further amended in the Senate to make it so local jurisdictions would need to consider whether they're requiring adequate ventilation and filtration systems. It also revised to stipulate that employees can wear masks, including N95 coverings, without penalty. Employers would be required to pay for those masks. Additionally, the legislation was amended to specifically prohibit loitering around the cannabis cafe, with licensees being responsible for ensuring that steps are taken to prevent such loitering.
Oh, I completely agree on the ventilation and filtration systems. That was one of the things that we did in that review of the lounges in Toronto was the ventilation. And in one of my paste memories that we run on the network over the weekends is a Vapor Central. And in one of the pictures is you, Scott and Aaron standing underneath one of half a dozen can air filters that Vapor Central was using in order to help clear the air.
Yeah, and when we went to the cafe, they didn't allow smoking inside, but
that was at the one. That was at the Hot Box. Abby
the Hot Box Cafe, that's what it was. I couldn't remember the name.
Yeah.
When we went there, you could go out back and smoke a joint.
Correct.
You couldn't smoke in the restaurant, which I have absolutely no problem with.
Yeah.
Let me see. Senator Ben Allen said on the floor on Tuesday's vote, the current law allowing for site cannabis consumption lounges, but banning the sale of food and beverages at premises has created costly and cumbersome workarounds to provide their guests with the expected experience by either taking out 2 property leases or having food items delivered in from outside vendors. Meanwhile, the measure, which will also need to go back to the Assembly for concurrence on recent changes, would also allow local governments to decide whether to allow cannabis cafes to operate instead of automatically legalizing them statewide.
That's just opting out, as the retail end of the stores. The bill makes explicitly clear the hemp-based food items or drinks are not considered non-cannabis products that could be sold at the cafes. It also says that non-cannabis items shall be stored and displayed separately and distinctively from all cannabis and cannabis products present on the premises. The legislation would also allow live musical or other performances on the premises of a cannabis retailer in areas where on-site consumption is allowed.
And there have been examples of California businesses that have found workarounds to permit on-site consumption while making food available to guests. But they've operated in a gray area, partnering with separately licensed restaurants that receive the profits.
There you go. Yeah, you wonder why what's just the problem with allowing um, food?
I could never understand that because most cannabis consumers I know get a little bit hungry. So
Yeah, I
it's just
know. Right?
a natural thing.
I know why they don't allow food, but
I
it doesn't add to any concern of a person's of whether a person's going to be impaired or not. Food, not that I know there's stories that mangoes can increase your high, but that's been sort of debunked here and there. But I don't know of anything else, a steak sandwich or something.
No, I think it's just lunch. That's
Yeah.
it. It's
Yeah. All right, story number 7. Here we go. This one comes to us from the New Brunswick. It's a release from the Justice and Public Safety Department. It says that cannabis, vapes, and tobacco has been seized.
This is in Moncton, New Brunswick. Cannabis, vapes, tobacco, and psilocybin magic mushrooms were seized from 2 unlicensed dispensaries recently. On August 15th, the peace officers from the Department of Justice and Public Safety, with the assistance of the RCMP, executed a search warrant at the Lennox Trading Post at 575 Main Street, Moncton. A 49-year-old male employee and a 23-year-old female employee were arrested and released on an undertaking. They face charges under the Cannabis Control Act, the Tobacco Tax Act, and the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act. The investigation is ongoing. And I will say this is a First Nations owned dispensary, and this is going to court.
I was going to ask you because it sounds like the name sounds like it is, and
yeah, they own a couple, and it looks like both of them got raided. So this is definitely going to court.
Now, do you know of the business?
No, they're about 3 hours from where I live.
Oh, okay, all right, okay. Now they say items seized include cash, cannabis buds, hash, joints, resin, shatter, cannabis products, vape products. I would think THC products were all part of the cannabis products. Same with the oils. Cigarettes. Well,
cigarettes. Yeah. That's a weird one.
Cigars. Yeah. Now, on August the 15th, officers executed a search warrant at the Lennox Trading Post at 767 Cloverdale. So this must be the other store, because you said there was 2 of them, right?
Yeah.
So 2 employees were arrested: a 21-year-old woman and a 31-year-old woman, both released on an undertaking and are scheduled to appear in court on January the 4th. They face charges under the Cannabis Act and the Tobacco Act.
As far as I know, these are wholly First Nations owned on unceded territory. So this is going to be a court case to see. And there's more than just this around New Brunswick. There's a lot of them. So this is going to be a test case, I believe.
Wow.
And under the new provisions of the Cannabis Control Act, landlords have responsibility to prohibit the sale of illegal cannabis. Failure to do so may result in fines up to $5,000 a day. And I would put forward that this is not illegal cannabis.
This is going to be interesting.
It definitely is. And like I said, there's more than just these stores. There's a few of them here. So
because like BC is raiding the stores, the First Nation stores out there as well.
Well, let's see what happens. These are not on reserves. These are in town stores, but it's territory. So okay. We're gonna find out. It's gonna go to court, and hopefully it will go right across Canada. The rulings.
Okay, so these are stores in the urban areas.
Yeah.
And not on the reserves.
But it's unceded territory. They've never agreed to cede this territory. So as far as I'm concerned, they have the right to operate there.
They have the right to it. Yeah.
New Brunswickers are reminded that there is also penalties for those who purchase and possess illegal cannabis, not just those who sell and distribute it. Cannabis New Brunswick and approved private retail partners are the only legal retailers of cannabis products in New Brunswick. A list of approved private retailers is available online, and I will say bullshit to that, because they are not the only legal ones. Tell that to the reserves.
Yeah, well, as far as the tobacco end of things, I know I have a friend who had some tobacco from the reserve, and the police officer threatened him with a $125 fine.
I've heard of it. I'm First Nations myself, so I don't know how that would work out with me. I think I would be going to court over it.
Yeah,
not that
he's
I want to.
Not.
You know, it does make a difference, I believe, but I could be proved wrong. You know.
Yeah. My friend, he's not First Nations, and he was asked that. The officer asked him that, and he said no.
Yeah.
And then he told him about the fine. So, all right, last story of the day. Headline says another Florida poll showed majority support for cannabis legalization ballot measure, but short of a requirement for passage. What?
Oh yeah, because they'll just change the rules.
Yeah, I know.
Another Florida poll has found majority support for an initiative to legalize cannabis that will appear on the ballot in this November. But the results show it falling just short of the steep 60% requirement for passage in the state. With fewer than 70 days until Election Day, the survey from the firm Public Policy Polling signals the measure's prospects of approval are tight, with 57% of registered voters in favor of the proposal, while 34% are opposed. Well, if only 34% are opposed, that would not be 57%. That's a...
Well, 91, so there must be 9% of the people are unsure.
Don't care, yeah.
Yeah. The survey involves interviews with 837 Florida registered voters from August the 21st to 22nd, and it's plus or minus is 3.4%. Meanwhile, a separate pair of polls published this month similarly found majority support for the Florida cannabis legalization initiative, but just one of the two found there's enough support to meet the 60% threshold for passage under state law. Come on.
And another recent survey signaled the Amendment 3 does not have enough support to pass. With majority support across every key demographic surveyed, overall 64% of voters said they backed the proposal, surpassing the 60% threshold required to pass a constitutional amendment. One opposition campaign vote no on 3 also recently commissioned a poll on the measure that similarly found 64% of voters in favor of the reform.
A Florida Democratic Congresswoman recently said she's undecided on whether she'll support the Florida cannabis legalization initiative, flagging her concerns with impaired driving. Even so, she does think the cannabis campaign has very good advertising.
I will never understand that. They're worried about driving under the influence. There's laws against that. It's illegal to do
exactly.
That. Use the law that's on the book.
Already there. Yeah, there's been a mixed bag of feedback on Amendment 3 from members of the Florida's congressional delegation.
One pro-legalization GOP congressman, Matt Gaetz, recently said he intends to vote against it, strictly because he feels the reform should be enacted statutorily, rather than as a constitutional amendment that would prove more challenging to amend. On the other hand, Representative Brian Mast, who's another Republican, co-chair of the Congressional Cannabis Caucus, predicted earlier this year that the measure will pass.
Meanwhile, a top staffer for Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and CEO of a top cannabis company feuded over the state legalization initiative this month, drawing attention to the anti-cannabis governor's position on allowing home cultivation, which would not be included in the reform measure. While DeSantis is actively opposing the legalization measure and has not voiced support at home grow option, the staffer said on Tuesday that Amendment 3 would create a monopoly on recreational that doesn't allow home growing.
A spokesperson
Well,
Sorry?
why doesn't DeSantis get that maybe included? Like, he is the governor. Why doesn't he go ahead and add that to it?
No, he's opposed to it. So
Yeah.
he's definitely opposed to a home growing option. He's opposed for against the measure completely. So
Yeah.
a spokesperson for the Smart and Safe Florida told Marijuana Moment that single subject restrictions for ballot measures under the state constitution meant advocates would have risked disqualification if they included provisions to provide home cultivation options. Separately, the head of Florida's correctional department claimed in an op-ed this month that passing cannabis legislation initially would actually increase the state's prison population, a paradoxical assertion that's being promoted by top staff of DeSantis. How is backwards is up and right's left?
Advocates and stakeholders are also awaiting a statement about the legalization measure from former President Donald Trump, Florida resident, who recently indicated he disagrees with criminalizing people over cannabis as more states enact legalization, and who said he'd be weighing in on Amendment 3 fairly soon. Roger Stone, a longtime Trump ally and GOP political operative, told Marijuana Moment last week that if the Republican nominee does ultimately endorse the initiative, he would guarantee victory, or that would guarantee victory.
Meanwhile, a hedge fund billionaire announced earlier this month that he's spending $20 million in support of candidates and to oppose Amendment 3. Of that, $12 million donation will go directly to the Vote No on 3 campaign. Overall, there's been a mixed bag. Why don't you put the guy's name there? Overall, there's been a mix. I love how they just do this. There's some billionaires going to do this, but where's the guy's name? Overall, there's been a mixed bag of supports and opponents of the legislation measure. For example, Florida GOP senator recently endorsed the ballot initiative, breaking with the state Republican Party that he previously chaired.
Yeah. Now, the Florida Republican Party officially came out against the cannabis initiative in May, clearing the way for the governor to raise money to fund an opposition campaign against the measure. The GOP state senator's endorsement of the legalization measure came one day after the Florida Police Chiefs Association and Florida Sheriff's Association both came out against Amendment 3. They argued that the reform would cause increases in youth use, impaired driving, illicit operations, and tax costs for residents, citing dubious evidence. Oh, don't legalize! It's going to cost taxpayers money.
And this can be completely directly refuted by the states that have already legalized this. And it's clear for anyone to see. And this is like sticking your head in the sand and ignoring everything, or just watching one news station your whole bloody life. Smart and Safer Florida, meanwhile, has earned endorsements from a variety of organizations, officials, and lawmakers, including Jacksonville Mayor Donna Deegan, who's a Democrat, Gladstone Sheriff Morris Young, Service Employees International Union, State Senators Joe Gutierrez, who's a Republican, and Shervin Jones, who's a Democrat. Last month, the governor also lashed out against Amendment 3 at the Republican National Convention, making hyperbolic claims about the reform would allow. Claims backers say they are absolutely untrue. Of course they do.
DeSantis claimed the proposed constitutional amendment limitless, arguing that it would establish a right to cannabis that would be more fundamental than Second Amendment or First Amendment or Second Amendment protections for free speech and guns, respectively.
What the hell do they have to do with each other? And how would they?
So he's trying to say it would establish a right to cannabis that would be more fundamental than Second and First Amendment.
How is that? Like, who heard this and thought, "Oh, that's brilliant"? Not a person in the freaking world.
Speaking at a recent police event, DeSantis falsely claimed that the most Colorado voters regret approving cannabis legalization. In fact, recent polling shows the reform continues to enjoy strong support there.
Wow. I can't believe the BS coming out. It's just
okay. Well, yeah, let's wrap that story up. So there you go.
That's a very upsetting story. It just
I could tell.
Full of crap. So much crap.
Yeah, and they're reporting what they're being told.
I don't know. I'm just baffled. I'm almost at a loss.
And that's why I laugh when I hear that the Republicans say they're going to legalize cannabis. I would just laugh because unless it comes from the guy.
This is a no-brainer. This helps people.
Oh, I know. Big time. Exactly. But it's that fear. You got to keep that fear up. Keep that. It's just nasty.
I wish we would have put this story earlier and gone out on a high note instead of this crap.
Sorry for upsetting the rest of your day. But it's time for us to go. Anything you want to say?
Peace out.
All right, from the Legacy420.com news desk, that's a news report for today. And for our buds at the Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, Limestone City Hydroponics.ca, Legacy420.com, and At-Eze.ca. In closing, we'd like to say thanks for watching or listening. And plus, don't forget to educate, medicate, and do not incarcerate.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
When you have a pain that's reached its peak, Legacy for 20 is so unique. If organic cannabis is what you seek, here's your trusted partner 7 days a week. Suppository salves, vapes and drops, topicals, edibles, infused pop. Just when life seems like it ain't easy, at Legacy 420 enjoy a pop freezy. Lab tested products make them the GOAT. Legacy 420 out on your road. Legacy 420 in Tyson, Mohawk territory. Indigenous organic cannabis at its finest.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.